And she's waiting patiently. Let's go straight over to my first guest. She is Talk's excellent international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Hi, Isabel.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you. Now, before we discuss Jim Ratcliffe, Nigel Farage has weighed in, and let's remind ourselves of what the Reform UK party leader had to say.
Well, he said that our population has gone up from 58 million to 70 million, and that with 9 million people of working age on benefits, we don't need mass migration. He said much of the country had been colonised by immigrants. Now, that word was a controversial word, and he said, OK, if you don't like the word, we'll tone it down. But just think about this. You ask yourself why public services have diminished. You ask yourself why rents have gone through the roof. The population explosion has done that. And then you look at parts of London, for example, where the road names, the underground signs, aren't just in English, they're in a foreign language as well. 1 million people living in this country don't speak any English at all. 4 million people living in this country barely speak passable English. And that's the point that he was making.
Well, Isabel, only in Britain, this country, our propensity for being able to get our knickers in a twist about words, hurty words. Ooh, we said colonised. Ooh, that's terrible. Well, look, you know, Nigel's right. Colonised, I don't find it an offensive word. I just don't think it's entirely accurate in the context that Jim used it. But we know, the point is, I don't want to have a row about hurty words. You know, Rachel Reeves, it's disgusting. You know, or the Guardian, it's racist. You know, I want to talk about what he meant. We know what he meant. Nigel Farage there articulately explaining what he meant, and millions of Brits agree with him. So while the government attempts to dismiss this as an appalling incident, you know, Keir Starmer here is how, you know, it's offensive and wrong, and he must apologise. Who the hell does Starmer think he is to tell people to apologise for their honest opinions? How dare he? Who are these people? You know, disgusting, racist. We know what Jim Ratcliffe meant, and millions of Brits agree with him. So let's focus on the meaning of Ratcliffe's statement and not have one of these childish rows, arguments about whether or not he used the wrong hurty words. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It is completely pathetic, and I think we all need to be quite cool-headed about what's going on here. What is going on here is that a Prime Minister who is on his last political legs is clutching onto a confected row in order to distract from his own political travails. That's what's happening here. I don't really think anyone was truly, genuinely, authentically offended by what Jim Ratcliffe said. They're just pretending to be offended.
Yeah.
They're just basically creating a row because it suits their political agenda. This has nothing to do with racism. And isn't it so beyond depressing that the usual suspects can come up with nothing better, nothing more sophisticated, nothing more thoughtful, nothing more analytical than just shrieking about racism? I mean, it's got to the point that it's embarrassing listening to the left as they constantly carp on about racism, as if this is the only explanation that they can possibly understand for why people in the UK might be feeling pretty fed up about the mass influx of people into our country who are heavily welfare dependent. And even if they're not heavily welfare dependent, the associated infrastructure has not been built to cope with the extra population. That is an entirely reasonable, logical complaint to make, observation to make about what has happened to our demographic. And my only regret as far as Jim Ratcliffe is concerned is not that he used the word colonised, because I think it's an interesting debate about what does that mean these days.
Yeah.
I mean, the Chinese are busy colonising many parts of the world. They genuinely are doing just that. It's not called that, but that's what they're doing. So I don't really mind that he used the word colonised. What I think is just a tiny bit disappointing is that he got his statistics a little bit wrong. So he got the point at which the population exploded by 12 million.
Our population in 2020 was not 58 million. Our population of 58 million dates way back before then. Jim said, in 2020, 6 years ago, we had 58 million. Now we've got 70 million, best part of 70 million anyway. Of course, he's wrong there, but that doesn't detract from the actual fact that our population for something like 20 years has been exploding. And the reason for the explosion is the influx of millions of migrants, both legal and illegal. We know what he meant, and the government's trying to deflect from that. And furthermore, Isabel, because old pompous Keir, who demands governance over what we think and say, apparently, and thinks he's got the right to demand apologies from anybody. I'll tell you what, Starmer, if you're watching, why don't you apologise for the appalling mess you've made of this country? He's over at the security conference in Munich at the moment, but how secure is he? But anyway, he said after Jim Ratcliffe he issued a statement saying, look, if I offended anyone I didn't want to offend anyone. If anyone who was offended by what I said, I apologise for offending them. The government said, you see, we've got a total U-turn from him. Yes, we demanded he apologise for what he said, and he has. No, he didn't. He just apologised if anyone was offended. He has not apologised for what he said, and nobody wants, or millions of Brits, most of my audience, I'll tell you that, do not want him to apologise because they agree with him.
Absolutely right. And, you know, it was one of those quite cleverly worded apologies, which is a bit like when you have a row with your partner or with your friend or whatever, and you say, you know, very grudgingly, you sort of say, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. It's not the same as saying, well, I'm sorry I said what I said, is it? It's just, I'm sorry that you're upset with me, but yeah, I'm kind of standing by what I said. And, you know, he just spoke the truth. That is the truth. You know, we have been, in many ways, hit with a mass influx of people. We were never asked, you know, in any sense that the UK voters were asked whether they wanted a mass uncontrolled influx of foreign nationals. They basically, according to manifestos, said, no, we don't want this. You know, they voted for parties. Well, in fact, no party manifesto said we're going to bring in millions of people. And yet successive governments have gone along and done it anyway. And it is probably the single most important political issue facing our country, because it leads to everything else. It has a massive impact economically, culturally, on everything you can think of. So I think, well done, Jim Ratcliffe. Yeah. You know, you were brave. You said it as it is. And of course, they all come, the baying mob will come for you. But
racist. It's racist. You know, they will shut down debate by using their favourite horror word. So I think you and I, Isabel, we're on Team Jim. Let me ask the audience, are you on Team Jim, or do you disagree with what he said? 0344 499 1000. I want to just talk to you briefly about this, because I've got Trevor Kavanagh coming on in just a while to specifically focus on it. But you brought this story in and we discussed it rather presciently, I thought, about the Cabinet Secretary saga. You said, this girl, or this woman, Dame Antonia Romeo, is about to get the gig, is about to become the first female Cabinet Secretary, because a poor guy called Sir Chris Wormold is getting the boot after just over a year, becoming the shortest ever serving Cabinet Secretary. You know, by the way, all these people, Sir Chris Wormold, Dame Antonia Romeo, who are they? Who the hell are these people? All earning 220 grand a year, doing jobs that you can't even explain, snouts in the taxpayers' money trough, the Westminster sleaze gang. Anyway, here's the deal, because Chris Wormold, perfectly good at his job, he's going because Keir Starmer is busy jettisoning all these poor people who used to be part of his inner circle, because he's desperately trying to survive himself, and the Labour backbenchers are saying your inner circle, your administration is what we object to. So all these poor people are getting sacked to save the sorry backside of that sad little man, Keir Starmer. So Sir Chris Wormald, going by mutual agreement, no, he's sacked. He's sacked. And he's getting a £250,000 plus payoff. Now, if you get sacked, you shouldn't be getting a payoff. And also, that's our money. So Keir Starmer is splashing taxpayers' money around in a sort of frantic, tragic bid to save his own hide. And it's not going to work anyway. But that is a scandal. Taking £250,000 of our money to sack some guy so he can try and save his own job. Outrageous.
I mean, this is a classic socialist thing of thinking that taxpayers' money is nobody's money, that it's somehow, you know, unaccountable. It isn't your money, it isn't my money, it's nobody's money, and it's unlimited. And this is just what they do, isn't it? I mean, you just think of Keir Starmer before he came in. Do you remember his favourite word? It was change. He always wanted change. And this is what he's trying to do in Downing Street, bring in change to try to shore up his ailing, absolutely foundering administration by bringing in a few new faces, acting like, well, I've got a whole new team in here, and here I am at the top, and I would never stop fighting, etc. We kind of just wish you would stop fighting, Sir Keir, and then we could actually have a whole new start of government. But anyway, absent that, we're getting some new civil servants. Yippee dippy doo.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, this is the most important job. The Cabinet Secretary is the chief of the civil service. So all of them, it seems to me, in living memory, last 20 years, all these people who get 220 grand a year, very important, the chief of the civil service, they're all useless. Look at the civil service. It's a total shambles. And I'm sure that Dame Antonia Romeo, if she manages to get through her vetting problems, because she's got something of a dubious past, will be just as useless as the rest of them. You know, if any of you people are out there and your kids went to public school and then went to Oxford University, get them a job in the civil service, because you don't have to do much work. It's perfectly okay to be completely useless at what you do, and they'll give you 200 grand a year, and when the useless Prime Minister decides to sack you, you'll get £250,000. Good, isn't it? Nice gravy train. Honestly, it's outrageous, all of this.
Well, do you know what it also reminds me of? It reminds me of all those, the same sort of characters that become chief executives of hospitals and also of the NHS. I mean, these people are paid an absolute fortune. You know, the head of the chief executive of NHS England, or whatever it's now called. They keep changing these things, don't they? And they fail each and every, they're always failing. You know, the NHS is a basket case, so are most hospitals. And yet no one is ever punished or reprimanded for their failure in these public jobs.
That's right,
they just
that's right.
Another one.
The civil service is a career in which you can fail upwards. You don't have to be, you don't have to do much, and you don't have to be good at anything. In fact, you can be really lousy at your job, and they'll still give you a bucket load of money and keep promoting you. And it's got to stop, to be honest with you. It's the reason the great and the good are actually crap and no good, and that's the establishment system, and we've got to destroy it. But we'll have to get rid of Keir Starmer first. Last point, I wanted to get you on this, Isabel, because this is causing ructions at Labour towers, that Tony Blair and his think tank have warned the government to ditch Crazy Ed Miliband's nut zero madness as soon as possible right now, and to relaunch drilling in the North Sea. He said, unless you do that, we're going to have really bad economic ramifications, and everybody's energy bills are doomed, or will be doomed, to go up even higher. They're already the highest in the world. Tony Blair, uncharacteristically, you know, sounding a note of common sense. Labour are furious about his intervention. So you get somebody who says something good, Labour can't stand that.
I mean, Blair, I mean, anyway, thanks, Tony. Thanks for coming out with that great insight, you know, some 15 years after you could have been saying it. You know, why is he so belatedly realising this? But I'm glad, better late than never, that he's actually woken up to this. And I think it does tell you why, gives you a bit of an insight into why Blair was so much more successful than any other iteration of a Labour Party leader, because he does just a bit more have his finger on the pulse of how people are feeling. I mean, remember, Blair's one of the few people that have said we did kind of screw up with the mass immigration. You know, he has said that. So bit of credit there. He's still far and away better than anybody that followed him.
Totally. I mean, he's got one foot in the real world, and you know, I've said this many times. You know, I always hated his politics. Didn't like his administration at all. But the one thing you can say about Blair and most of his acolytes was they were competent. They managed the country competently. I didn't like the way they managed the company, but they knew what they were doing. What terrifies me about this current lot, you know, I can't stand their politics, but that was always inevitable. But they are terrifyingly incompetent. That's the problem with this government. It's not so much political, it is competence. They're hopeless, absolutely hopeless. Isabel, great to talk to you. Thanks for a fabulous week, as always, and have a lovely weekend. We'll talk on Monday. Isabel Oakeshott there, Talks International editor.